Welcome to the Grateful Podcast. I'm your host, Jack Wagoner, and today's guest is Tristan Gregoire, 23-year-old founder of the Best Self Protocol, where he helps dreamers go from uncertainty and doubt to clarity and self-mastery. Tristan, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you having me and appreciate the kind intro. Good to be here.
Of course, man. That wasn't very creative. I kind of just copy and pasted what you have in your Instagram bio right there. I find the best intros are the way that you want to be introduced. So obviously, if it's in your Instagram bio, you like that description of yourself.
I would say so, and I would say it's pretty specific or pretty descriptive of what it is we do at the Best Self Protocol. So I would say it serves justice. It was good.
100%. So it's called the Best Self Protocol. I love that name, by the way. I think what a lot of people are trying to do in the self-improvement space and all of this is find their best self. So my first question to you is, who is your best self?
That's a good question. Um, so I can go a lot of ways with this, of course. I would say the best self and my best self is an ever-moving potential. It's an ideal of myself and an idea as well of myself that keeps evolving, keeps changing. It's sort of like the closer you get to the goalpost, the more it moves, right? And that's why it's not really a goalpost; it's more so just a pursuit. Um, so it's a person that always keeps learning, always keeps evolving, always finds the present moment to be the gift and um, to find a lot of meaning in the journey. But it's also someone who's pursuing the future version, the potential, and all the dreams that this best self has, I would say.
That's a great answer. And I mean, that's the reason I wanted you on the show and I wanted to connect with you because I saw your stuff and I was instantly just blown away at how similar the message you're trying to spread is to the one I'm trying to spread, where it's not this cutter version of success where it's like all about the outcome. You talk about processing the journey and the difficulty about of enjoying the journey while going for a goal. And like that's the duality of gratitude and ambition I talk about here. It's I think it's the hardest thing in life, especially as an achiever.
Mm. Yeah, I think it is I think it's difficult, but I think it's you have to figure out sort of the principles that can guide you there. And I think when you get to the point where you remove yourself from the outcome, the journey becomes like the prize, right? It's definitely difficult, yeah, but I would say it's very doable. And I even remember making a video not so long ago about how I think and how I've kind of experienced that having more gratitude for the present moment, having more gratitude for where you are, will never make you more lazy, right? If anything, it will make you more ambitious. It will make you want more of this amazing feeling that you have in life. But to your point about not chasing this outcome, I think that's exactly the point about what true personal success really means, at least to me, that it is right here, right? It's right in front of us. We just have to get in, tap into it, and know where to find it, really.
Right. It's something I keep repeating recently. It's been that your happiness cannot be contingent upon the outcome actually coming to fruition. So you
Mm,
can't, if you're chasing something, if you have a goal and that goal doesn't become reality, if you don't achieve that goal, that can't ruin your happiness, your peace, whatever you want to call it. And that's a hard point to get to because a lot of
mm.
us become so attached to the goal that we're chasing. As I mean, that seems normal. So it's hard to detach from a goal while actually pursuing it as well. Have you found that difficult as well?
I definitely have in the past, but I think that's kind of the idea. Once you kind of so just to give some context, the best self protocol is essentially a collection of ideas and principles. And what I like to call it is that it's built on the trifecta of true personal success. So it's built on the spiritual, the mental, and the physical ideas of what makes success. But I've been on this journey for now almost a decade, right? And it's through that I've through the thousands of hours of research, I've kind of found principles and ideas that go again, that always are they are always happening for the people that you look up to, whether they know it or not, whether it's intentional or not. There are certain principles that make success. And that's sort of like what I've tried to build and incorporate into the best self protocol, which is when you have those ideas, it becomes really simple to follow them. And one of them is, for example, this idea that when you remove yourself from the process, exactly as you said, or remove yourself from the outcome, sorry, and simply find not only, you could say, happiness, but also fulfillment, but also achievement in the pursuit, the sort of outcome becomes very trivial. And you can just focus on the pursuit, you can focus on the progress you're making, and it changes the overall pursuit. And the funny thing, the most amazing thing about it is that the more you focus on the progress and not the outcome, the more amazing outcomes you'll have as well. Things will just start to happen by themselves. It's really, yeah, it's fascinating, I would say.
Yeah, 100%. The when you focus on the progress and or the process and not the outcome, you get more outcome is
Yeah.
an idea that is so interesting because so many people will hear that and then they'll say, "Well, I'll just focus more on the process then so I can get more outcome." But in that, you're actually focusing more on the outcome. And this idea of doing things, uh, Chris Williamson said something, and he goes, "We sacrifice the thing we want,
Mm.
happiness, for the thing that's supposed to get it, success." And that just blew my mind because we do. We could have something right now, but we're sacrificing that thing because we are told that this thing is supposed to get us there, and that's the societal norm. It's such a weird balance.
Yeah. And I think it's like one of those fallacies of success, which is kind of like what I try to clear up in the principles of success, right? Of course, you have to sacrifice. You have to, I mean, we could get into that, but I wouldn't even label it as a sacrifice once you kind of know what your goal is, right? When you have clarity of what you want to do, everything else becomes trivial. So it's not really a sacrifice at that point, right? But I would say you still have to let go of something that doesn't serve the higher version of yourself, right? Or the life you want to create or whatever it is. But as Chris Williams has said, and I love that quote and idea as well, it's become so normalized to sacrifice like what I would call as the good that's right in front of us for the great in the future, right? And I'm sure you've heard of this, like the enemy of great is the good, right? Because we settle for the good and we don't chase the great. But sometimes perhaps the good is good enough, right? Because the good is right in front of us, whereas the great, it might never happen, right? It's just this ethereal idea that we have of the future that might never come, right? We could die today. Who knows? So it's like, why sacrifice so much that you have right in front of you for a perceived better outcome in the future that is supposed to be better than what is actually right in front of you, right? It's like sacrificing family time to work on your business so you can finally spend more time with your family. It's kind of, it doesn't make sense, right?
Fisherman's parable. Do you know that?
Yeah, yeah, about how
Yeah,
many
yeah.
fish, and then yeah, you catch more fish
Right.
to feed the family, and you
Yeah,
sell, you get a bigger boat in the end, and yeah, you get a fleet.
but he's already on the beach fishing with his
Exactly.
family. Yeah. Um, that one really stuck with me when I heard that for the first time.
Yeah,
So how
it's
do we
no, sorry,
this
please.
idea of yeah, this idea of good enough and great, how do you choose? How do you like say, oh, right now I'm gonna go for good enough. Well, but on this certain thing, I'm gonna go for great. How do we choose? How do we make that decision? That's an important decision.
It's a very important decision, and it's a very great question. I think it's actually I would say probably the center of this idea of being on the pursuit, but also enjoying the pursuit, right? My whole philosophy and idea behind the best self protocol and becoming the best version of yourself is having a direction, sort of like a north star, something that you're pursuing, something that you are going towards, something that's never really ending. It's a never ending journey, right? You can sort of see it like as being on a mountain. You're chasing the peak, and the peak of the mountain is this potential or your life. Like it's the end of your life, right?
Hmm.
But along the way, you also have to stop up and enjoy the journey, right? You have to kind of see these photo stops or milestones where you once in a while just stop up and say, "Wow, look at this beautiful view," or "Wow, look at this beautiful flower." And along the way, you'll of course also have like, should I go left or right? Right? Sometimes you don't know because you still need to get to the top. But I think knowing what is good and what is great, to answer your question, is all about having clarity of what is really valuable to you. Like, what do you value? What matters to you? Who do you want to be? How does this person think about the things that you're doing? How does this person want to live their life, right? And then it's just about aligning that with the potential you see. And I think sometimes it calls for the good, simply saying, is this a moment that's replicatable? Can I replicate this in the future? Is it a moment that's only manageable for me to cherish now? Well, maybe that's good enough, right? Maybe I should just savor this. And it doesn't mean I won't be continuing on the journey, but I'll just savor this moment for however long it lasts and then continue. And then there are other times where you see something that is so great and you see something that is like subpar, maybe even good, but that trade-off is not worth it. And maybe like sacrificing that good is worth it for the great. So I think it's an off the moment decision. But I think once you have clarity over what you are kind of grounded in, what I normally call a personal compass, kind of like steering you in the direction you want to go, then those decisions become a lot simpler because you know how to gauge the decisions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's a great explanation. So, how do these principles fit in your life? We were talking a little bit about your business and all that before we started recording, but I'm interested how you implement it in your own life.
So I would say the most important part is having this North Star, this idea, like this potential that you're pursuing, this top of the mountain. And then it's just having this personal compass, which is the person you want to be, your values, your beliefs, kind of like your past, what has made you who you are, like all these things, all these parts of who you are, your identity that makes you who you are, but also who you want to be. And then it's deciphering in the moment. Sometimes it's like an of the moment decision. Sometimes it's
Hmm.
like a couple months in the future, right? There's so many different timelines you can make decisions on. But it's making decisions that serve the best version of yourself, right? I love this idea that, people say sacrifice what you want now for what you want in the future. I love saying sacrifice what you want now for what you want most. It's sort of like
Ooh,
there are times where what you want now is also what you want most, right? There are times where what you want in the future is less than what you want most. Does that make sense? So I
yeah,
would
yeah.
say there are moments that are so rich in their presence in the present moment that you don't need to sacrifice them for the future. And I think it just comes back to the old saying of like, know thyself, right? Know who you want to be and how you want to show up in life, not only in the future, but also in the present moment. And then focusing on creating integrity with that, like aligning how you show up, how you act with this ideal. And like, of course, there are many, many practical ways to do that, right? And we can get into that. But I would say this is the center of the idea of how you actually live this life that you, per definition, want to live.
Yeah. So, what do you want most?
That's a good question. I think I think to enjoy the journey while pursuing my potential. And it's very open-ended and it's very vague because that's a fallacy that people have in their mind as well, that they can predict everything, right? And once you kind of detach from the outcome of what you believe your life should be like, that is when your life that is when, sorry, you allow your life to happen the way it should be, right? You allow your life to unfold the way that life is meant to unfold, right? And that's why if you keep your direction and just let life unfold, you probably get pretty close to where you want to go. And for me, it's simply enjoying the journey, enjoying the ups and downs, making an impact, helping people live the life that they're meant to live. And well, of course, find fulfillment in what you do, right? I think a lot of people misunderstand happiness and fulfillment. And I love this idea that a lot of people say, like, life is about happiness. But I don't think so. I think life is about like experiencing life. the ups and the downs, the struggles and the challenges, the achievements and the overcomings, right? All of this, that is what makes life worth living. Um, like one thing I think if I should put it down to one sentence, I love you asked this question because it's something I think about a lot, but it's also like, how
Hmm.
do you make it so tangible? If I should put it into one sentence, I would say it's to be at the end of my life and look back and rather regret things I did than regret things I never got to do. I think that would be
Yes.
how I said how I would testify to living a life that I wanted to live.
Man, we
And that is
have
what I want
such,
most.
yeah, that's beautiful. And we have such similar outlooks on life. I love it. Every word you're saying, I can't stop smiling and nodding my head because I agree so much with with everything that you're saying right now. And that idea of wanting most just to look back on life, and really regret nothing. But if I do regret something, it's because I did too much. It's because I lived so. If it's because I lived so much, I took opportunities and risks, and uh, that's what life's about, right? I'm just going for it. I don't want to. People talk about leaving, not wanting to leave anything in the tank, and I'm not sure if that's the greatest representation of how if that's the greatest way to say it. But
Mm.
I don't want to leave anything on the table. I don't want to leave anything to chance. I want to make my life the what it could be, you know? And I think that's the top of the mountain that maybe is ever growing because as we grow as people, I think our potential grows as well. So that
Exactly.
top of the mountain that we're chasing grows with our growth, which I think is a really interesting idea to think about as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is ever growing and it's never ending until, of course, that one day it ends, right? But I think it's getting to that top of the mountain and enjoying not only the view from the mountain, but also having enjoyed the climb, right? So I love what you're saying about not leaving anything on the table. Um, but I think that's the idea of fulfilling your full potential, right? Like utilizing the life that you were giving to create the life you wanted to create. I think I would sum it up as, right? Um, I don't know if it's leaving everything on the table. I resonate with that a lot. I would relate to you saying like that's the idea, but a better way to say it, I would have to think about as well. But I love the idea. I love the idea.
Yeah. So, where'd you get all these ideas from? I know that I gained a lot of this perspective from reading, from listening to podcasts. I'm interested to hear where the sources of these ideas and this philosophy is.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so I wouldn't be able to say, yeah, but perhaps it's become a philosophy. You could say that, the best self philosophy. I appreciate the kind words for that.
Yeah.
But I would say it's been a long journey of exploring, discovering, especially as you said, like books, podcasts, audiobooks, speakers, mentors, exploring myself. I think a lot of my sort of answers have also come from introspection, just sitting with
Mm.
thoughts, like pondering, like in a way philosophy, and just thinking about life and questions, um, which often leads to a point of like not necessarily finding the answer, but sometimes just understanding that we don't need the answer, right? But that's for a different that's for a different conversation. But I would say seeking information will get you information, right? But a lot of information and a lot of answers, especially for someone listening to this right now, looking for that answer. Like, where do I go in life? What do I do with my life? What am I here to do, right? I think a lot of that is found in inspiration, but the answer, the actual answer to that is probably found within yourself. What you just need are tools or methods to find it, but it's already within. I think we're beings that are so deeper than just surface level of like, oh, how's the weather today? Like, what's going on today? What's the news saying, right? We have way more powers inside of us if we really tap into it. And I love the quote of, so it's from Blaise Pascal. I don't remember the exact quote, but it's this idea of like what is it? All of society's problems stem from man's inability to sit with himself for 30 minutes or quietly in a room quietly for 30 minutes or something like that, right? And it's just this idea that we are so distracted at all points and in time by everything, of course, now more than ever. But just finding that moment for yourself and looking inward and finding some of those answers, I think is really giving. So to give a very tangible answer, a lot of podcasts, thousands of hours spent on audiobooks and videos, and then a lot of introspection.
Yeah, I'm reading a book about Socrates right now.
Yeah.
I, and I mean, he talks about always just examining your life. An unexamined life is not a life worth living, he says, and I think it's something like that. And asking yourself questions, and that's something. The introspection piece is so important. That's definitely
Mm,
where I've got a lot of my life philosophy from as well. Just writing things down,
mm.
uh, because so many people look to others to tell them what they value or tell them what they need to chase, and you're the only one that truly knows that. So I appreciate the mentioning introspection, because that's a piece that is so important, and that is also uh, just overlooked often.
Definitely, definitely. I think, especially in modern society, which is what I have seen in my journey so far, is that we have become so extreme in everything, and I won't get into politics because I don't speak about politics, but even in introspection or like how to find your answers, we are either on one side, which is tell me what to do, or we are stuck in what society has labeled overthinking, right? Like this
Mm,
loop of not going anywhere. And I think the most amount of progress is probably somewhere around in the middle, probably leaning towards introspection. I'm a bit biased, but I would say that's where I would find it. But there's nothing wrong in learning from others. There's nothing wrong in, like the best artists steal, right? It's like that's just part of it. There's nothing wrong in saying, oh, these are some of the principles that have worked for others. These are some of the ideas, right? And when you mention Socrates, like Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, whoever it might be, like these are thousands of year old principles that still apply to today. So why not use that? Why not utilize that to understand the human condition, right? Why figure everything out on your own? Because you won't. You'll be spending a lifetime to only learn a fraction of what is available to you, right? So I don't think it's necessarily negative to learn from others, but you have a lot of, like, you need guidance, you need direction, but the actual path is for you to lead, right? That's for you to
hmm.
walk. And I think that's the important part. So it's a mixture, right?
Yeah, the Buddhist way is the middle path, right? I think sometimes people forget that, but like this way of inner peace and clarity
Mm,
is the middle way.
yeah.
It's not too much introspection. It's not too much uh, just hearing what everyone else has to say and not even hearing your own thoughts. It's in
Mm,
the middle. It's a
yeah.
balance between the two, and that goes for just about everything. This middle way, this middle path is, I find it, everything just comes back to this idea of balance. Uh, any of the answers to the questions I've asked today could have probably been simply answered with the word balance, but it gets a little annoying uh, for anyone listening. This idea of balance, it's so intangible. We can't seem to grasp it because it seems to answer every question,
Mm.
but none of them at the same time. It's a very interesting thought I've had recently.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I would love to hear your thoughts on that or your perspective as well on the balance because I think for me, balance is this idea of like a pendulum swinging, that there are no
Hmm.
in between or in the middle, but it's more so like moving from left to right or whichever direction you want to go, right? But it's like
Hmm.
moving between things, sort of like harmony, right? And as you know, everything in life has a frequency. Everything in the universe is built out of frequency. So that's why I also don't see balance as the in between middle, because the only thing in life that has the frequency that is static, that is in the middle. That's the sound, the frequency of someone flatlining, right? It means death. So I think picturing balance as this slow moving, harmonious movement between things, like between reading more or asking yourself more, between the left or the right politics, between exercising more or relaxing more, right? It's never one thing in the middle. It's always like this harmonious flowing thing. Um, but yeah, it is very intangible. It is very intangible, and I think the biggest way to be okay with the intangible is to accept that that is just how it is, right? It's just following with it, or like going with the flow, but still having some direction, and then just going with it, understanding that it's like if it goes to the too much to one side, it'll come back. Like it'll come back
Hmm.
around.
So I'm a baseball coach. I'm not sure how
Mhm.
much you know about baseball. I'm also
Not
a
at all,
baseball
but
player,
enlighten me.
but so I'm specifically a catching coach. So the catching position is the one behind the plate in all the gear
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
that catches the pitches, right? And so catchers have to do what's called receiving or framing, where they bring the ball and they present it to the umpire in a way that makes the ball look like a strike. And so it's a lot there. But what the core concept there is that it's all about timing, right? So if you're too early, you're going to have to stab back down and it's not going to be smooth. If you're too late, you're not going to catch the ball. So it's about finding the balance. And what I always teach my students is that you have to be too early, then be too late, and then be a little less early, then be a little less late. And
Mm,
it's this idea of if there's this middle path, there's this complete balance. You're never going to quite get there, but you can go on either side
mm,
and get closer and closer until you're getting infinitely closer, where you can't really tell apart the
mm.
what you're doing from the static middle way. And so it's this idea of constantly just redefining and going back and forth at smaller and smaller levels.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, and I think like that's the best we can do. Like, and this about the harmonious, like it's that is what happens when you ground yourself in your values and everything like that. Your perception of balance becomes more clear. You get more clarity in life because it narrows in, but it's also narrowing in so far that you only focus on what's important, not all everything else, right? And you know that.
Hmm.
But it's also if you narrow too much in, you get narrowed in your thinking as well, right? You get static, you get a fixed mindset of this is how to do it, right? Let's say in the baseball example, someone comes along and once in a generation player that now has a different striking style. And now this perfectly imbalanced catching style isn't cutting it anymore, right? So there will always be disruption to be there will always be disruption to the balance, right? And that's the beauty of chaos and order, that you have to have some chaos and some order, which is why the perfect balance doesn't really exist in my mind. But I love that kind of like narrowing it in. That's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only way that you can kind of you have to test it. It's back to the
Yeah,
experience
yeah, yeah.
thing. You have to, or what we talked about even before this podcast we started recording, where the best way to learn is just through action,
Mm,
and
mm.
that's what you're doing. That's what I'm doing. We're just taking action because that's the best way. That's the only way you're really gonna learn how you can improve by doing. You're not gonna get better at something by just thinking about it while looking up at the ceiling.
No, and that's the thing of being too caught in your introspection, right? Thinking that you can figure everything out, which is that you can't. You have to have action, otherwise you won't move further. So you need some ideas, but you need to test them, and then you reiterate. But with only ideas, like I love this saying. I think that it changed a lot for me because I would describe myself as one of those overthinkers, these ambitious
Hmm.
dreamers, like 8 years ago, maybe, right? Having all these dreams and ideas, but never really like pursuing and testing, but just thinking, what is right? Where should I go? And I love this idea that the most miserable people in life are the most ambitious people. But they are the lazy and ambitious people, right? They're the ambitious people with big dreams that never go anywhere because all they do is think. So we need action. And furthermore than that, we need reiteration as well, right? But learning from doing is that's the path forward.
Yeah, I definitely have been caught in that spot before, and I love that
Sure,
idea
sure.
that the most miserable people are the most ambitious that don't take action. Yeah, when I was younger, I think that was me. And at some
Mm,
point, I just decided, well, because for so long I had this idea that you have to wait until you're out of high school or out of college to take action the way I wanted to take action. But at some point, I realized whose rules are those? I just want to take action now. Uh, and it's about, and I don't know if you deal with this when you're coaching, but just getting people to realize that these rules that they seem to have that are holding them back are not real. They can just take action. They can just do it, as Nike says best.
Yeah. They did something there, right? Um, I love that. Yeah, rules are there to be broken, right? I mean, I think that's the big fallacy of like that, especially the modern society. I don't know how it is for you, but especially in I would say in Scandinavia very much so, but in Middle Europe there is this idea. I'm sure you've heard it perhaps from some of your guests from the UK, right? This idea of like not sticking your head too far up, right? Like
Hmm.
fitting in with the group, right? And there is this idea that we all have to play by the same rules. We all have to do the same, follow the same path and that. And it's just like there are infinite ways to live life. Like, and finding out which way is the best for you, I think is the definition of living a life that's well aligned. And that takes some practice and it takes some time, but it's definitely worth it. And I think it's something you never really quite get right. It's just something you're exploring. It's a constant exploration, really.
Yeah, yeah. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Grateful Podcast. I'm interrupting to let you know that it would mean the world to me if you could share this episode with someone that you think would enjoy it, or leave a review down below so I can learn what I can do better and what I'm doing well with this podcast. It's a passion project, and I really want it to turn into something that helps people everywhere. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. So, we talked about this idea of ambitious people
Mm.
that don't take action. I think on the other side of that, on the other side, if that's the left, there's a right, there's an extreme right, which is the ambitious people that can never do enough. And I know my biggest problem in life is I know that I need to take quiet and take some time just to slow down. But even when I do take that time to slow down, I feel guilty for not being productive enough. And I mean, that's my biggest thing. I'm always trying to work on that. And in the past few weeks, I've actually been making some progress, which is really
Mm.
nice. Um,
Love that.
but I'm wondering if you feel that and if you resonate with that.
Yeah, it's definitely something I deal with a lot, even on a daily basis. I mean, I help driven and ambitious people like make their dreams a reality, right? And it's like a big part of that is being driven and ambitious. And I think it's just so there are two ways to answer this, right? There's the answer that goes kind of like what you want to hear, and then there's the answer that is like what's the underlying thing, right? And one path is that the, the the ambition and the drive is kind of like what gets you to succeed, right? It's what makes you make progress, but it's also part of who we are, right? So it's a trait, it's a characteristic almost. So I don't think it's something you can switch off. However, of course, there are ways to deal with it, to manage it, to what I normally say is like develop a very healthy relationship with it in a way that your drive and ambition doesn't equal guilt. Because guilt is essentially this feeling we get when we act out of alignment, right? When we act out of alignment with how we're supposed to think of ourselves, right? If we want to pursue a lot of things and do a lot of things, but we're lying on the couch, that's out of alignment, right? So we feel guilty for not doing what we are supposed to do. So I love this idea. I don't know if it's coined by anyone else, but I first was encountered to it by the amazing Mo Goddard. I don't know if you're aware of him, but he has this idea of the happiness equation. And what he essentially says is that happiness equals our expectation and then the reality, the outcome. And if the outcome is greater than our expectation, no matter how good it is, it will be a disappointing outcome, right? So, what the happiness equation really so there are two variables, right? It's your expectation and it's the outcome. And I think when you have high expectations, no matter the outcome, the outcome will be less satisfying, right? So
Hmm.
one thing is lowering your expectation, and the other part is raising the outcome. And that's normally the part a lot of driven and ambitious people go, right? They think more achievement, more success, more money will make them happy. But sometimes it's just about lowering expectations and finding gratitude in other things, finding achievement in other things, perhaps even. Um, yeah, I'd love to go more into detail with that, but you steer away which one to go to.
Yeah, the other day, I think this fits in very well. I wrote a tweet and it said, "Your desire for more is a contract to be dissatisfied until what you desire comes to fruition. If you want inner peace, you must either stop desiring more or make your desire come true." Uh, and I think a lot of people, as you said, a lot of these ambitious people only think about making your desire come true. They don't think about uh, stopping to desire and desiring less because to a lot of people that feels like complacency is what it's labeled as. I don't think it is complacency, but I'd love for you to dive into that because you said you've dealt with that with your clients and stuff.
Sure, sure. This is how I came up with this analogy of the mountain, because I don't think you have to choose. We are such intelligent beings, and there's a big duality to ambition and drive and success and achievement. And that is, our ability as human beings to hold two opposite ideas in our mind at the same time, right? You can be very grateful for the moment, but still pursue more, right?
Hmm.
It's like, to be truly grateful, I'm aware, to be truly in the present, you have to let go of all expectation, right? And simply be present in the moment. But that doesn't mean you'll come back to your pursuit or your drive or your ambition afterwards, right? So you can, that's again the idea of harmony and balance, like finding pleasure in the moment, gratitude for what you have, but also still being on a journey towards something more. And I think that we have to keep both in mind, because I don't think you can take out ambition and drive, because I think it's innately coded into our brains, right? We are not meant to be in this modern society. We are meant to be hunters, right? We are meant to hunt deers, right? And it's like we are meant for this. Like, this is why we have dopamine, right? We are meant for progress. We are meant to pursue something. And that is why there's so many, especially for men, often you hear in this modern day saying that a man on a mission is a better man, right? A man who's on a pursuit will be way, way better because he knows he's chasing something. So I don't think we can carve that out or like operate that out, because that is per se one of the consequences of being ambitious, right? It is having that difficulty settling with some moments. But I think you can do both. I think you can have both gratitude for where you are and where you are in your journey, but still know that you are on a journey. Um, the best quote I would say is probably, to sum this up, is this idea of enjoying being in the process of becoming. And it's sort of like, enjoy that you are moving forward, but enjoy it now as well, right? It's like enjoying the fruits of your labor while you are laboring, if that makes sense, right? You can move fruits to your basket, but you can still taste it. You don't have to save everything away, or you don't have to savor everything now and not think about the future, right? There's a middle ground. And I would say that's the idea, right? Finding that middle ground of holding both ideas in your mind. Not so much about choosing one over the other.
Is this confusing for a lot of your clients? Because I know for people that I've tried to explain this to, and you just explained it really well. I love the eat fruits of your labor while laboring for more fruits idea. I think is very simple, but
Mm,
has some complex layering and really gets to the
definitely.
point. But yeah, how do you explain this idea in to people that that really struggle to see that they can hold two opposite ideas in their heads at the same time? Because although yes, we can do that, it's not uh, it's not very forward thinking, or it's not, that's not the word I'm
Yeah.
looking for.
It's not very
It's
straightforward.
it's yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of ways to test this, right? It's sort of like there are a lot of layers to it, of course. But a ground principle that you will come to understand when you really dive into like philosophy and your consciousness and everything is that this idea that um, I'm thinking, therefore I am, is not really true when you look into it. It is, if you really, really go into it, it would be more aligned to say, I am, therefore I'm thinking. Because we are in the moment, first off. Like thinking is a byprocess of that, like a byproduct, right? And one way to test this is just to be really, really, really simple and say, don't think of a pink elephant, right? And you'll instantly think about it, right? And our minds are so designed to be controlled by our thoughts. But once you realize that our thoughts is a byproduct of that, and that we can control our thoughts in a different way, you can also then, so to wrap it up, our thoughts is not truth. That's what I really want to get to. So just because we think, but I cannot be ambitious and also just enjoy the fruits of the moment, that doesn't mean it's truth. It just means it's a thought you have. So at that point, it becomes rewiring your thoughts. And to be very specific in this moment, have you ever looked at a sunset and just thought, this is so beautiful, right? Like I love this sunset. It reminds me of peace and beauty and just life and hearing the birds chirp and everything, right? That's a beautiful moment in and of itself. But it's not like it will make you not want to go home and eat dinner that night, right? It's like you'll still be hungry at some point. So it's like you can have different things for different times. And it's going back and forth between that, I think, where the balance is found. It's not necessarily saying, oh, in this present moment, I both want to enjoy this moment, but also pursue more. It's more so like a state of being or a philosophy that we can do both while going back and forth through it, right? Like balancing between the acts of both, I would say.
Yeah. So what age group are most of your clients? Because you're 23, about to turn 24, and we talked about how it can be hard to coach. I think it was before the call. We talked about how it can be hard to kind of have this authority when you're young and when you're a young coach. So yeah, what age group are you teaching this to?
So mostly it's mid 20s to 30s. So it's older people than me, definitely. And that's also why I get a lot of the like, what do you have to teach me about life thing. But I always have this notion, right? It's like age is just a number. And once you kind of like one thing I really remembered when I had so much self-doubt before starting out this thing. Like, how could I, how could I do this, right? These are principles, they're not mine. What do I have to add? And then I remember this idea I once learned that, every adult is pretty much just a baby that grew up and are just older, still acting in the same way they did when they were 10-year olds. Like most people, when you think about them, they're still stuck in the same behavioral systems. They're still stuck in the same loops. They're just way older. And especially, I think nowadays there's a big contrast because we are growing up or we grew up and are now thriving in the age of information, but our parents wasn't, right? So there's a shift happening now where information is becoming much more readily available, but an 80-year-old person nowadays is probably very similar to how they were thinking when they were 20. Of course they have a lot of experience and some stuff, right? But they're thinking in the same way. And it's when you go into the rewiring of the thinking that you see the change. So my sort of idea behind that is that it's not about how old you are. It's about how much time you've actually spent on changing this thinking, changing who you are, progressing as who you are. And that's why a lot of my clients are also older than me, simply because I've spent majority of my life doing this, very, very dedicated. But I definitely mostly work with people who are above 20 normally. But I would say I have some that's younger. It's once again the same idea for me as for my clients. Where are they in terms of their growth? Like how much time have they invested in it? It's not about
Mm.
an age thing. It's about where are they on their mountain, so to say.
I talked to this guy named Nicholas Hutchison yesterday, and he has a book marketing agency where uh, he he helps like self-improvement authors like market their stuff.
Mm.
And he's read over 500, 600 something self-improvement books in the past like 5 years. He's a very impressive guy, but he always talks about how he's 31, um, but he's over 1,000 years old in his wisdom because of all the books he's read. Uh, and so it's yeah that reframing age. I don't think age is the best way that we can measure uh, authority in a niche or in a on a topic because you have spent more time on what you teach than many people that are 80 years old, you know? So just
Exactly.
because you're 23, 24 doesn't mean that you can't uh, teach people something. And it shows something about society and being closed-minded as well.
Exactly. Just to give another very practical example of this, if you had to look to someone of like how to get the most out of the moment, right? How to be the most grateful for a moment, or like how to play the best. Would you look at an 80-year-old person, or would you look at like a 7-year-old? Right? It's
Mm.
like age doesn't have to do anything with like our ability to do something well. Of course, in some areas it does because life experience is also you could say a commodity, but often it's not how much time you've kind of been like existed. It's how much time you've been spent doing something in particular, right? And that's why I forgot who coined this quote, but it's like the quote of I much rather fear someone who's practiced the same kick 1,000 times than 1,000 kicks one time, right? That
Bruce Lee, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That when you become a master of something, right? Because you've dedicated so much time into it. I mean, those 1,000 kicks, that doesn't say anything about how old that person is, right? It's just 1,000 kicks. So I think like even though it has since been debunked, the rule of 10,000, I think it still really, really resonates that it's much more about how long we've done or how much we've done something, not about how
Mhm.
long.
Also, I think there's some point in the older you've been alive, the more you've probably conformed or converged to society's ideas. And when you're younger, the reason that you'd want to learn how to play from a kid is because they've not yet had all of these ideas imposed upon them and internalized. They're themselves. They're truly alive, and that's why they live the way they do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think it's so like a lot of neurosciences now and psychoanalysis is coming out to saying like most of our character now, like at any age, is formed from like 3 to 7 years old, I believe, right? So that's most of our personality. And it doesn't change a lot from that. Like we can, of course, skew it in one direction or another. And as someone helping people become the person they want to be, I can attest to saying that you can change a lot of things about yourself, a lot, but a lot of things will also stay the same, kind of in its root. Simply, as you said, because we get imposed on these things. And like there's something pure about a child, and everyone knows that. And that is exactly why.
Yeah. So, is it ever a struggle to be both a teacher of the best self path and also a student? Like, I know you're constantly growing,
Mm.
and how do you balance that?
It's a great question. I don't see myself as a teacher of being your best self. I see myself as a guide and as someone sharing the principles that I am also the student of. Because these principles, many of them are as old as anything, right? Like even for Seneca or Socrates or Marcus Aurelius or whoever, um, like I wouldn't be able to teach those because they are not mine, right? So what I normally do is I use my personal experience for teachings and sharing what has worked for me. But other than that, it's shining light on the objective truths that are out there, the universal principles that work. And it's more so opening people's mind to it than it's telling them this is how to do it. Because that's another principle of this philosophy, is that there are no right way to do anything, right? There are your way. So it wouldn't be right of me to sit and tell you how to do something if I'm not you, right? I cannot tell you what the truth is, but I can perhaps help you find your truth.
Yeah, yeah, we all have our own truths. And I actually talked to a friend yesterday about that exact thing. Like, it's hard to, we all want there to be this objectivity to what we should do. It
Yeah.
feels that would help guide us, that would give us the comfort we need. But once you embrace the subjectivity of the truths for you,
Mm,
is when you can grow and when life becomes a little bit more beautiful, a little bit more magical.
yeah, definitely. I think that's the beauty of letting go, right? Is I briefly mentioned on it earlier, like this. When you let go of the life you think you're supposed to live, that's when you live the life that you're meant to live, because you cannot predict it.
Yeah, I love that quote. That's a hard hitter. Have you ever read The Alchemist?
I have not. I have not. Not yet. It's on my shelf right over there, still to do. And I
Okay.
think that's another problem of being ambitious and driven, is that you would never be able to go through all the books that you want to
Yeah,
read.
that is true. That one though, I must say, read it because I've read a good amount, but that book is the one I will always come back to. I read it every June,
Okay. Wow.
and it's just it's just so good. And I'm excited to talk to you about it. I won't say what I was gonna say because I want to leave it up to you to read.
Sure.
But I'm excited to hear what you think because I think that one you'll really love. What are some of the books you've read? Because you were talking about listening and reading earlier.
Wow. Well, then we have to go into, is it about, so I could recommend someone for starting out. I could recommend someone for my best insights, right? There's so many books. Like I think one thing I've kind of come to learn. So I've read all the classics, right? Like Think and Grow Rich. Like
Yeah.
there's so many. Like the 4 hour work week. You go into like highly effective 7 habits of highly effective people. Like all the classics, right? But then you can also learn a lot about things, or you can learn about a lot about like mindset, mentality in books that are outside of that, right?
Yeah.
So like one thing that I, for example, learned is, I mentioned before Mo Goddard. He has a book called Solve for Happy, right, which is this happiness equation. But he also has a book called, um which one is it? Well, he has a lot of one. He has an amazing book called, that little voice in your head, I think it's called, is very amazing as well, like thoughts and thinking. But also, he has written a book on AI and the AI evolution. And I remember reading that book, and that book taught me a lot about my life, like who I want to be, even though it had nothing to do with self-help, right? So that my point being that I think you should read all the classics. Like I think there's so much to be found in those. There are classics for a reason. But I also think a lot of the answers you're looking for, you'll find at a point you weren't expecting it. Like you won't, like I remember reading Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I'm not sure if you've read
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And I remember feeling very underwhelmed afterwards. I was like, that really
Hmm.
didn't give me a lot. And maybe I need to reread it and perhaps find some more information from it. But I remember it wasn't what I was looking for, right? I had this expectation, getting back to the happiness equation of expectation and outcome, of like I would read this book and I would find the answer to meaning of life, right? That was my expectation, and it just
Hmm.
didn't give me that. Again, it's been many years since I've read it, so perhaps with a new perspective, it would give me some new insights. But there's so many amazing books to read. I mean, like Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. You can get into like Mo Goddard's books. I think are amazing. I've really spoken a lot about him, but he has an amazing approach to life and philosophy because he's a data scientist. So
Yeah.
he is the creator of Google's AI's department back in the day. So he's like an original creator of AI, artificial intelligence, and he just has this beautiful outlook on life, which is so weird, right? It doesn't go well together, and I think those weird quirks are the places where you find the most insights, I think. And what resonates with you?
Yeah. Well, first off, I just love what you said about how you were reading a book that you did about AI, and then you found all
Yeah,
these things about like meaning that you took away. And
yeah,
it's that idea that I think we always find what we're looking for,
yeah.
and no matter what we're reading. The books that have resonated the most with me, it's funny because recently I've read a lot of nonfiction, biographies, philosophy, psychology, whatever. But when I think about what has resonated the most with me, it's often this mythical fiction.
Mm,
So, like The Alchemist or Siddhartha.
mm,
Um, there's a book called The Celestine Prophecy, the Laughing Sutra, all these different books that that are fictional. Um, but when you read a book that's fictional or mythical, you generate this empathy for the character, and you learn so much implicitly that
mm,
you don't necessarily get from the explicit statement of a lesson, because uh, there's so many lessons, unteachable lessons that you can't. Uh, that you cannot really learn unless you go through them yourself. But when you have this empathy for a character, I think that's the one way you can bypass that through this fantasy and
mm.
fiction. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
you live through it in a way. It's very
Yeah.
actually very interesting that you say it, because that's been one of my um like focus areas coming up, that I want to read more fiction, because I've been reading so much nonfiction, like so many
Hmm.
books, and but fiction is yeah, I love that as well. And I love the point you said. Like I just had this quote pop up. I needed to share that with you, but like in the idea of like there's so many unteachable lessons that you have to experience yourself. I love the quote saying that the difference between knowledge and wisdom is experience, right? There's something you cannot learn from knowledge that you have to experience, and that is what makes you wise. But yeah, those are some very interesting books. Many of them I've never heard about. What would now I'm just curious. What would be some of your favorite non-fictions then, of like
My
psychology,
favorite
philosophy,
nonfictions.
anything?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just gonna look back here.
Yeah,
I
that's the
have
thing. I couldn't remember as well. That's my thing. There's so many.
So if you want to talk about business books, this is my favorite business book. It's called The Obvious Choice by Jonathan Goodman. He actually came on my podcast, and it's really interesting about building a business in like the modern age. I
Cool.
just finished reading uh, The Undoing Project by Michael
Uh-huh.
Lewis,
Yeah.
and this is about psychology and like all these different psychological principles that are pretty uh, they debunked like economic theory based on humans being rational thinkers. Very interesting stuff. Um, I love biographies, so like
Mm,
Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, or Steve Jobs
mm.
biography by Walter Isaacson.
Yeah.
Um, then there's another one, Principles by Ray
Definitely. Ray
Dalio.
Dalio. Yeah.
Yeah, that one phenomenal. And those are just some of them. Those are the ones I've read more recently.
Yeah, yeah. I was about to say, I think there's a lot of recency bias kicking in with these sort of thing, right? I also like
Yeah.
that's why I mentioned Mo Gaddad. I just read his third book, and before that, I was reading. So I read both Mo Gaddad, and then I finished that, but I also read the Daily Stoic every day. So that's why I have all
Yeah.
these Stoicism philosophers in my mind, right? But I mean, if I had to recommend a couple of books, I would say. The most impactful book I think I've ever read is a very very short one called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. It's profound. I remember having so when I read, I go through it very quickly and I take notes, or I highlight, and then I revisit it for the ideas I resonate with. And I remember that was the first book where everything was just highlighted, because
Yeah, yeah.
it's sort of like it's written in the same way almost as Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, that you kind of have to think about every sentence, and every sentence, if you think about it, has something profound behind it. Um, so it's like that's why it's so short. I think it's 50 pages or something like that, and it's just profound. So I would say that as a man thinketh, reality transurfing, I think it's called, amazing as well. I remember one called "Don't Believe Everything You Think," which is amazing as well. And yeah, what would be something else? I think also like a classic like Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, I think is a life change. I remember it changed my life when I read it like 8 years ago or whatever it might be now. So there are a lot of things that could, and then I would say, um, The Power of Intention, I think it's called, by Wayne
I
Dyer.
haven't heard it.
No,
Power of
it's
intent.
not
I'm
as,
writing all these down right
yeah,
now.
sure. And let me know if you need more. I have a long list. But yeah, I think
Ah,
this some different ideas to do different things. And then I definitely also recommend reading some kind of philosophy, Stoicism, like Buddhism, whatever it might be, just to open one's mind to different ways of seeing reality or through lenses, really.
philosophy is just amazing. I love reading philosophy.
Yeah.
I read a book recently. It wasn't as philosophical, but it was, hold on. Yeah, Why Buddhism is True
Mm.
by Robert Wright. And it was like an academic book, but going through the reasons why Buddhism is true. Um,
Okay.
it really got my, and like he kind of painted a picture of what society would look like if everyone meditated for 10
Mm.
minutes a day. Very interesting. Really got me thinking about the things that people need to work on. We need to work on on a societal level, and how simple a fix could actually be, but how difficult it is to make that happen.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think like on that topic, something like *Sapiens* by Noah Yuval
Yes.
is so good as well.
You, Yuval
Um,
Noah Harari, I think.
yeah, right, yeah, exactly. But also like Robert Greene is amazing as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like even seduction, teaching about like how people work, or like the 48 laws of power, right? Like understanding psychology on a deeper level is such a, it teaches you a lot about yourself, I would say.
Hmm.
And then I had one more in mind, but I forgot about it. But yeah, yeah, definitely. I would say that those are amazing picks as well.
Have you read How to Win Friends and Influence People by
Yeah,
Dale
sure.
Carnegie? Yeah,
Yeah,
absolute classic right
yeah,
there.
exactly. And like, and even going into business books as well, like, um, what's it called? Like, negotiation. What is it? What's it called? Well, Never Split the Difference. I'm pretty sure it's called.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but even also, I remember reading one book last year, which was entirely about money. So it's called the Bitcoin Standard, and it really is just about Bitcoin. But the entire first chapter is about what money is, like how money is made and what money really makes up in this society, right? How it used to be pearls from one island to another, and then inflation came because they faked pearls, and you know, it just gave such an insight to society, not necessarily in
Hmm.
understanding money or buying Bitcoin. That's like besides the point. It's just understanding how society is built. Like that's also what
Right.
Sapiens talks about, like
Yeah.
stories, that we tell stories and that's how society is built, right? So there's so many small principles that you can get so much insight from by just small little sentences, really.
Yeah, it's so true. Reading's crazy because you're
Yeah.
just like downloading knowledge into your
Yeah,
brain.
exactly.
Uh, yeah.
And those
Podcasts
they
too.
have answers that you would never find with introspection, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Podcasts too. I mean, obviously I'm a
Definitely.
little bit biased
Yeah.
toward podcasts, but yeah, I listening to podcasts is another one that, I mean, sometimes if you don't really want to read a book, but that author, but you want to know more about what it's about, you can
Mm,
get the same or a similar value by listening to that author on a podcast.
definitely. Yeah, I would say like for anyone, Robert Greene's books, like even I think it's the 48 Laws of Power was his first. Like it's 20 years old, right? It's 25 years old. Just listening to him now on a Diary of a CEO or Impact Theory or whatever podcast you listen to, you'll get so much from him just listening to him because it's in his mind, right? It's not on the pages. So
Right.
very true, very
Exactly.
true. Podcasts are amazing.
And and that's true. That's true knowledge or true intelligence is, you don't like memorize something. You actually understand it on a deep level when you can say it over and over, and in different ways, and dumb it down for people. That's important as well.
Yeah, I love the idea that Naval Ravikant speaks upon, like that the most intelligent people are the ones that can take very, very, very complex ideas and make it super simple. Like
Right.
that's true intelligence in a way, right? Um, I love that. Yeah, definitely agree.
Yeah, and he also said in his newest episode with
Yeah, I saw that
Chris
with real
Williamson,
intelligence. Yeah, I loved it.
yeah, yeah, he said that the people that are making simple concepts sound complicated are often like the trying to impress or the not so smart ones.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think there's like this I don't remember where I've heard it, but this idea of like the bell curve, right? That it's always the person in the middle that's not too focused in like too complex, but
Yes.
it's also not too simple. That's the person that gets it, right? Because they kind
Yeah.
of see the middle ground. But also the quote he said in the most recent interview on Wisdom with Naval, where he said that the only true test of true intelligence is your ability to get out of life what you want out of it. I think something along those lines. Did you hear that
Hmm.
one?
I did, and that
Yeah.
was, and I was gonna bring that up to you earlier actually, because I think that that really aligns with your message and what you're trying to
Definitely. Yeah,
bring across
definitely.
as well.
It's about finding your like your definition of about what who do you want to be, your best self, but also your dream life. Like what is this life that you want to live? And only you can find that. Of course, with some guidance and some help from books, from mentors, from guides, whoever it might be, spiritual leaders. But it's your path to walk really.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap this up. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think
Likewise.
hopefully the audience did as well. And if they did, they can find you on Instagram. I'll link that in the description. They can join your free school community, which is so cool. Where else can they find you?
So yeah, free school community. You can follow along on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, wherever you consume your content. I also have a podcast starting up. Would love to have you as well on, Jack.
Ooh,
Called the Best
nice.
Self Diary, but also the Best Self Podcast. So kind of two different aspects of sharing my journey and then sharing the principles. So definitely, if you want to go some more in depth with how it tangibly looks to actually do some of the things we've talked about today, because you can only go so much in depth in an hour, right?
Yeah.
Check out those long form. And yeah, other than that, I think that's about it. I am Tristan Gregoire everywhere. And yeah,
Awesome. Man, thank you.
thank you, Jack. Thank you for having me. It was an amazing conversation. And I cannot read to me to I cannot wait to read some more nonfiction. No, so fiction.
Yes, 100%. Thank you for listening to the Grateful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to me if you could either share this episode with friends and family who you think would enjoy it, or leave a review down below on what I can do to make this better for you and for other listeners. All that would just help me be able to spread my message of gratitude and living a purposeful life. I hope you have a great day. See you soon.